This podcast contains strong language.
Hello and welcome to What Lingers. This is the podcast from the people behind Storytelling Lisboa, where we uncover the questions behind people's stories.
I'm Christian Figueroa.
And I'm Liz Melchor.
And we are the team behind Storytelling Lisboa, where once a month, 10 storytellers get on stage in front of 200 people and tell true and personal stories related to a theme.
We don't produce anyone. We encourage newcomers. The night is free for all. We want an inclusive stage dedicated to fostering community, sharing the human experience.
And we just love it. But, honey, there is a problem. We always have lingering questions for the storytellers and no format to ask them. Until now.
What Lingers is a chance to dive back in, inviting storytellers to retell their stories and stay for a conversation in front of a smaller live audience at LX Brewery in the heart of Lisbon. So Christian, this week is such a good story. It is, our podcast name is What Lingers, and this is one of those stories that has really lingered with me.
How so? Tell me more. I'm very curious. I have to say, I do love this story and I do love this storyteller, but I want to know more.
Okay, but I'm not gonna spoil the story for the audience at home, but I will say it is a love story. And love stories are always good.
Yeah, we all love stories. And we have to tell that love is always the thing that people love the most, of course.
That reminds me, okay, my favorite fact about storytelling is we have two themes that we repeat every year. Love and sex, and they are by far our most popular themes, but the fact of the matter is that the theme love is way more popular than sex.
Yes, Liz, this stories has it all. We have rom-com vibes, we have fun stories, we have everything. So get ready for this amazing journey we're getting into.
And a reminder that we recorded this in a legit brewery, and so you may hear a bit of background brewing.
So are you ready? Here's Marco with his story on the theme Changes.
The thing you need to know about me in my mid-20s is that I was an insufferable skeptic. I did not believe in astrology. I did not believe in 11/11. And the thing I especially did not believe in was love. But that doesn't mean that I forego the whole romantic thing. I had crushes, of course, and I had this huge crush. Like a crazy crush. I had this crush on this woman from work. She was the new marketing lead. She was technically my boss. But she was beautiful and she had this skin that shined like a dolphin. And it was one of those early 2000 rom-com crushes where I saw her and that Kiss Me song started playing by Sixpence the Richer. And we would talk. We would chat, but nothing was ever really happening until one day, I'm sitting at my desk, I'm working at this big tech company, and I get a Slack message. For those of you who don't know Slack, it's usually traumatizing to get a Slack message, but it was from her, so I was super happy about it. And I get this message, and I open it, and it says, 2 questions. What are you doing today after work? And how do you feel about people touching your feet? And I was like, well, one of those questions is super easy to answer. But the second one I feel like I have to be careful about. Because when you're at the beginning of having a crush on somebody and you're anything I say could give them the ick. So I really need to think this through. And also, I'm an open guy. I don't want to yuck anybody's yum. So I'm I guess it depends who's touching my feet. So she's meet me in Chinatown after work. So it sounds it could be a date or it could be a murder. But I go there, and what it is that we're getting these Chinese foot massages. So we go there and we sit down, and for like an hour while we're chatting, I'm like trying not to like make weird faces while the strongest man I've ever seen just like beats my feet up for an hour. But it was great. And we chatted and we got to talk more. And after, she was like, hey, do you want to go for a drink? And this is, guys, a sophisticated woman. So I'm like, yeah, let's go for a drink. She's probably going to want to go drink some like natural wine or something. And she's like, yeah, there's a great tequila bar up the street. So we go and we drink many tequilas. We have a lot of margaritas. And one thing about me that was true at 26 and is still true to this day is I am an absolute lightweight. So I'm smashed and we're talking about everything, but the conversation is really flowing. And I think I was at this stage in my life where I had this philosophy on dating where I would be like the most honest, aka the worst version of myself. Because I was like, listen, if you want to be with me, I'm going to make it hard for you. This is who I am. So I was being honest about everything. We talked about everything, including the fact that I didn't believe in love, which she was shocked by. She was like, no, you have to believe in love. And we talked about, things that we were interested in. And I asked her what her favorite movie was. And she said, Call Me by Your Name. And I said, amazing. What did you think of the book? And she said, I haven't read the book. And I went, give me a second. I need to go to the bathroom. Because the date was going great, but I can't date somebody that has seen the movie and not read the book, because that is absolutely ridiculous. And so I go to the bathroom, and you're on a date, so you go to the bathroom and you text your friends, and I open my phone, and the message that I have from my best friend is it love? And I look up from my phone, and there's graffiti on the wall. And the graffiti on the wall says, love is rare, so when it's real, be there. So I walked back out to the bar to be there. And continued on the best first date of my entire life. We talked about everything. And after we left that bar, we kissed for the first time. And then we went to a restaurant where we proceeded to order the entire menu, sit on the same side of the table as each other, not eat a single thing. But we tipped well, so that was fine. And then the rest of the night we spent in my bathtub, just chatting about our lives and getting to know each other. So the next morning, I wake up and I go to the bookstore and I buy Call Me by Your Name. Because I'm like, I kind of like this woman, but I can't like somebody that has watched the movie and not read the book. So I get the book and I write an inscription in it that is so cringe. And I give the book to her. And basically after that day, we were inseparable. We spent every day together that we weren't traveling, and we did everything together. And it was maybe like 3 weeks later that we were at a restaurant. We like going to restaurants. And we were sitting at a restaurant, we were sitting at the bar, and I looked over at her and I was like, wow, I think that I love this woman. But it's been 3 weeks, so I can't tell her that I love her, right? So she goes to the bathroom, and what I do is I take out my phone and I open the calendar app and I like scroll really far down and just pick a random date, and I go, this is the day that you tell her. That's what it said on the calendar invite. So we continued to hang out, we continued to spend every moment together, and I continued to be in love with her. But a problem arose, which is that we both used to travel a lot for work. And I was looking at my calendar, my busy work calendar, and I saw a notification that I'd forgotten about, which said, this is the day that you tell her. But she wasn't there. And so I didn't know what to do, because I was like, I sort of have to tell her. And all my friends knew about this whole situation. So they were like, yeah, you have to tell her. But she wasn't there. So I was like, when am I supposed to tell her? And I'm like, I guess I'm just gonna wait until she comes home, and then I'll tell her. And then on the night before, the notification was there. She was in California. I was in Toronto. I got a phone call at like 1:30 in the morning, and it's this woman that I love. And she's drunk, and she picks up the phone, and she goes, hey, I know this is really weird, and I'm not supposed to do this on FaceTime, but I need you to know that I'm in love with you. So, I said it back. And we were in love. And we continued to be in love, and we continued to build a life together. And I realized that whole time that I thought that love didn't exist, I didn't believe that love didn't exist. I just didn't believe that it would exist for me. And that's a big difference. And so a few months later, she is looking at apartments just as a hobby. She finds a beautiful big one, and she says, "You don't have to move in, but I'm getting this apartment for us." She got us a big apartment. And then a few months after that, after moving all her stuff in, I moved all my stuff in. And we started living together, and we started creating life together. And she met my parents, and we did everything together. And we were true partners, not just like in the, colloquial sense of the term, in the sense that we supported each other. We did everything together, and we tried to make each other's lives better. But the main thing that we did was support each other. Like I said, "I want to quit my job." And she said, "I support you." And she said, "I want to go to Germany to make wine." And I said, "I support you." And then she said, "While I was in Germany, I met somebody and we hooked up, and I want to see how it goes with him." And I said, "I support you." And that's what I did. I supported her through that. And I was in an open relationship, but not an open relationship in the sense that she was dating somebody else, but I was only dating her. But I was also trying to support her, which is a really strange thing to do, because she would have issues with this guy, and I would be like, "Just break up with him. We already live together. We can just be together. This is so easy. This is so chilled." But life is complicated. And so I supported her. I supported her when she went back to Germany to go make wine again. I supported her when she called this guy on Christmas morning. Yeah. And I realized one day that I was thinking so much about whether or not she wanted to be with me, that I hadn't thought for a really long time about whether or not I wanted to be with her. And I realized one day during the pandemic, I just woke up and we were living our lives, and I looked at her and I just thought, I don't want to do this every day for the rest of my life. This is not the way that I want to feel. And so it was decided that we should go on a break, which if you're an adult, that actually means that you're breaking up. That's like countdown timer. And we went on a break, and then eventually we broke up. But I still loved her, and we still loved each other. And the thing that we always did was support each other. So I supported her through our breakup. I supported her through us moving out together. I supported her through finding a new house, moved everything into that new house. And the last thing left to do was for me to go back to our empty house, the house that we'd lived in for the last 2 years, and clear out the rest of my stuff. And my stuff really was just like a pile of books. It was like a bookshelf, a shitty IKEA bookshelf, actually. But we'd moved out all the furniture, and that was the only thing left. And so I remember the day she was ready in her new house, and I went by myself to go to our house to clear out all the stuff that was left, so all of my books. I walked into the house, and it was empty, and I couldn't help replaying all of the moments that we had lived there. And I go upstairs to the office where the bookshelf is, and I sit on the floor, and I start going through, taking all the books out and putting them in a box. And it was a really sad moment because, this was the end. I knew that this is the life that we had built together, but once we handed over the keys, that was it. That was the end of this period of my life, and this was the end of us. So I packed all of these books, into my box. And at the end, the bookshelf was empty, but it was still like wobbling. And to be fair, I built this IKEA bookshelf. So I was like, this is probably my fault. Like I've just done shitty construction. But I went to go look at what it was that was causing the bookshelf to be all wobbly. And I pulled the bookshelf out, and behind there was a book. And it was a book that like the front had folded up, so it was like so fucked up that you couldn't even see what it was. But the spine wasn't broken, which means that nobody read that book. And so I pulled the book out, and I straightened it out, and I looked at the cover, and it was Calling by Your Name. And I opened up the front page, and there was the dedication that I've written 2 years earlier. And it said, "Dear Lisa, let this be evidence that love really might be real."
I want to apologize. The story was much funnier when I told it in front of 200 people.
It was not. I cried as much as I cried today. So.
But, you know.
Are you crying? Raise your hand. Oh my God.
I forgot.
Marco, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you. We know you from the stage, of course, and from the past, but can you quickly introduce yourself better for everyone at home and here in the audience? Just a quick review from you.
My name is Marco. I'm a writer, mostly. I've lived in Lisbon for 4 years now.
Congrats.
And I love storytelling Lisboa.
And where are you from, Marco?
We love you.
I was born in South Africa, lived in Canada for most of my life, and then now Portugal.
Yes, amazing.
I want to tell you that it was amazing to hear that story again, and I find that story just so tender. And you told that story for the first time, I think it was almost 2 years ago or more. And the podcast is called What Lingers, and it's about these stories that sort of linger in our memory. And the repeated book has lingered for me for all this time and for other people. I was talking to somebody today and telling that you were going to be on the stage, and they were like, "Oh, is he telling the story with the book?" You know? And so, yes, so thank you so much for sharing. And actually, I want to start with like a book question. I had a writing teacher once, and he had this trick he gave us, and he called it repeat, repeat, evolve. And it's taking an image or it's taking words and it's repeating them throughout a story, a novel, whatever. And then by the very end, that image or words, it evolves into meaning something more. And your story completely does that with the book. And I know you're a writer. And so I'm wondering how consciously you thought of the book structurally inside of your story.
Yeah, I mean, this story actually started backwards. It's the only time in my life where I was in an experience, like, okay, like, not to ruin the illusion, but it's like, obviously we construct these stories for the stage. In the moment of actually experiencing that, when I like went behind the bookshelf and the book was there and it was like crumpled up, and then I looked and saw what book it was, I was like, whoa, the fucking symbolism. Yeah. I was like, this is crazy. I'm gonna like tell this story one day, because, you know, I think when you're telling a story, so often there's decisions that need to be made about like, where is the beginning and where is the end and what are the themes and what matters. But this was a situation where I was like, life is presenting this to me and I'm so aware of the symbolism in the moment. And I think even like what it meant for me being, you know, in that time where I was like, well, I said that I could never be with someone who had watched the movie but never read the book. And it's like, well, she didn't read the book, so it's probably her bad then, actually. It's probably why it didn't work out.
Oh no, but I was just gonna say, yeah, it's like when life sort of throws you those symbols, and then as a writer, you sort of it's like you attach to it because it like gives you meaning, and then also you realize like, oh dang, like I can really use this for my storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, it gave me an ending, and then it also gave me a place to start, because it's like, I think I listened to the original version of the story that I told 2 years ago now, which is really crazy. And there's a lot of stuff in there that, like, you know, the audience didn't care about. And I think even like getting to that first date, like structurally, story-wise, that first date exists so that you can get to the book. It's like, you know, you need to care about this book. You need to understand what it means for me, in order to understand like why that was an actual moment in my actual life that had like a big effect on me. And I think like I had this experience and then forgot about it. And I actually, the reason that I told the story was I went home to my parents' house, and my parents' house is where my library lives now. And I saw the book and I opened it, and I had no idea what that inscription was. Like, I'd forgotten about it in the, you know, since time had passed. And like reading that inscription in my parents' house like transported me back into that moment in our apartment, where I was like, oh, our relationship is over, and you know, my life has changed.
And then structurally, I also really like that you bring up the inscription at the very beginning and you tell us, oh, it's cringe. And then I'm standing there and I'm like, oh wait, what does it say? Like, I want to know. And then like you end it with it. And I think, and can you say it again actually right now? What it was?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know if I know it 100%, but it's like, dear Lisa, which is her name, shout out Lisa, proof that love might actually be real. I don't know, if you listen back, it's probably very different to what I said, but it was something like that. It was like something super earnest. And I think, you know, I'm like a romantic guy, so I think even probably in writing it, I was like, if this works out between us, you're gonna look back at this book and be like, oh shit, this guy knew from the beginning. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know that she ever read the inscription more than once. I was the one that like it had meaning for, because I was the one that found it again. So.
Oh my God, thank you. Yeah, that's amazing. I was tearing and crying here and on the stage listening to your story. Thank you for sharing again. I'm really curious, because you started your story saying that you were very skeptical. And I was wondering if you can recollect on your mind or memory why you were this way. Like, we believe or not believe in something because of course, the surroundings. But you were really aware that you didn't believe in this. And that's like my first question, like, if you can point why. It's like your parents were like very scientific, and I come from science background as well. And it's normal to not believe in all these like ethereal things. But also, would you describe yourself today as the opposite, or do you think your whole life's changed already and you change? Do you think you're not as skeptical anymore?
I would say that today I am the opposite of that person, where I believe in love, but can't find it. Aww. And that guy, I mean, he could find it, but he didn't believe in it. Yeah, I mean, why I didn't believe in it, I think I tried to bring that more into this story, where like, obviously, I think the first time I told the story, it was told very much from a wound, and it was sort of like I had this experience of like moving to Lisbon, and people are always like, how long have you lived in Lisbon? And then they're like, why did you move to Lisbon? And like, in a way that was, you know, like my Lisbon, like villain origin story, where like, that is pretty much the reason that I moved. Like, we broke up and I didn't want to live there anymore, and I was there because of her. So, you know, like, that's why I wanted to tell that story. And I think like you know, as time has passed and like I've had an opportunity to think more about that story, there's a lot of details that I felt like I wanted to add into this version that were just more true to like where I am as a person and like how I understand that experience. You know, one of them being that it's like, I think the reason that I just didn't believe in love at that time obviously was like through self-defense. It was like, as anybody who has come to storytelling as well knows, like I'm a big rom-com guy. I always have been a big rom-com guy. And so obviously like you know, my parents are very much in love. So like I had good models for it. There was a lot of things. I just didn't feel like I was deserving of it. And, you know, I think I tried to to highlight that a little bit in the story. Well, not even highlight it, I just said it straight up. If you listen back to the tape, I'm pretty sure I just said it.
Absolutely. And also that now that you're touched on this, I think like, well, not picking labels or anything. I mean, you relate with women and you are really upfront with this. I love romance, I love rom-coms. And I mean, I come from Colombia and I mean, we live in patriarchy, we have to say it. How is this your experience of you being this open person that relates with women and that you're also vulnerable enough to say that you believe in romance or that you like watching even just rom-coms? Is this something that beginning with this story, that believing in love and watching rom-coms and now writing about it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, you know, I'm apprehensive to be like, this is, you know, cause correlation, but like, I went to like a very queer university. Like all of my friends in university were queer. So I think like as I was coming of age, I guess like becoming an adult, my ideas of like what masculinity were, I think were not as, I guess like not as toxic or as traditional or whatever. You know, spent like a lot of time watching Gossip Girl, Sex and the City, whatever. And loving all of that and like not seeing anything wrong with loving all of that. And yeah, I mean, like, I think that I generally still to this day, like, have issues relating to just, like, straight up, like, masculine men. Yeah. But I think that, you know, like, I think my whole life emotion has been the one thing that's, like, easy to connect with people on. And, like, if you're, you know, it's like an old, like, interviewing trick. Like, if you're open and vulnerable with people, they will do the same with you, and not in a way of manipulation, but just like that's the only way that I know how to relate to people. So like to be honest, like I haven't found it that difficult. I think that's just like who I am, and if people have a problem with it, like I haven't really heard of it that much.
Yeah. Yes. Cheers to that. Let's drink to that. Absolutely. For more queer universities in the world.
Yeah, shout out gay bars, shout out Ariana Grande.
Wait, which school?
And so like my whole university experience was like super queer, and like even today if I'm like, let's go out and dance, I'm like, what I am saying is like, put on the Dua Lipa. You know what I'm saying? like give me Dua Lipa, give me Ariana Grande. That's just like what I know, and that's where I feel at home.
I want to ask about a moment. Christian's taking a moment to calm down.
I need to process that.
Yeah.
I need to process that. I mean, oh my God.
You want to go out dancing? Okay. I want to ask about the moment. I mean, in some ways, it's the turn of the story, right? It's the moment where you're supporting her and she's supporting you, and then she asks to explore a new relationship, or I don't know, with this man in Germany, and you support her because that's what you do. And I'm wondering if you could like slow down that for us a little bit and tell us what your, because we know your external reaction, but what was your internal reaction when she told you that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you tell a story, you have to choose like, what do we have time for, what do we not have time for? And I think like I've been very careful, even in the retelling of the story, like she is a great person and she's a wonderful person, and I still to this day want the best for her. She's looking for an accountant right now, if anybody knows one. And so like, it was never my intention in telling a story to be like, a person did a thing to me and like, that's what happened. So like, yes, the net thing was like that I supported her. Like, did I spend like a year like not sleeping and like staying up like crying and shit? Absolutely. But I think it was always more important, like I think because I've had so many of those experiences in my life where like I know what it's like to feel very shitty about yourself, that I didn't even ask if we can swear in this podcast, I'm sorry.
You can do everything.
That like anytime I see somebody in that situation, it's like what you need the most is support. What you need the most is somebody to be like, you're not that shitty, life is just really complicated and like it's totally fine. So yeah, I mean, listen, there's like a very complicated story of like what actually supporting her in that time meant, because there was a lot of things going on. Like she took leave from work, and it was super rocky between us, and like we really did for a while become more like sort of roommates in a sense, and like there was this. It was just like really unsure what the relationship was supposed to be, but through that whole experience, I was always sure that like you are actually dealing with something. Yes, like I'm dealing with my emotions about how I feel about this, which obviously were super complicated. It didn't feel great, is what I would say. But the whole time I was more like, you need to be supported through this. And so perhaps to my own detriment, I was like, I will park my own emotions about this. And, hopefully one day there will be time for me to have feelings about this. But for right now, it seems like you have a lot of feelings about it. She wasn't a monster. It's not like she was like, I'm doing this thing. So there were events that were like pretty good stories, but not ones that I'm going to tell publicly that are, that sucked. But I think it was always about, I think it's also like, how are you supposed to turn that kind of love off, You can't just be like, I see that you're in a hard time, but because I am like affected by the hard time that you're having, I'm just going to like check out. Seems weird to me.
And so then in looking back now that everything happened and you have like more time to reflect, would you have made sort of the same decision of support and pushing perhaps your own feelings aside a bit?
I would have been like, listen, we're breaking up, but I will support you through whatever's happening. I think I spent a lot of time like not really being in a relationship, because relationships are, a back and forth, a give and take. I think she was giving what she could have given, but I think she was also going through a lot of confusion and a lot of like new experience. And so if I went back, I would be like, I'm out of this relationship, but like obviously I will still be there for you, and so that's what I would do differently.
But it also sounds like in the way that you told the story that's something perhaps that's changed for you, and that this relationship maybe even changed for you, that you didn't think you were deserving of love, and that now you feel differently.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I don't know how to elaborate on that.
Yes.
Correct. What you just said, yes.
Were you like similar ages or different
She
ages?
was 4 years older. She was 30, I was 26 when we first started dating. There was also a lot of power dynamic stuff. I mean, she was like technically my boss, and anyways, but I can talk to you after about a bunch of this stuff. Okay. But yeah, publicly, I think that's.
I'm really curious about that, because also I have this image of me. I mean, I'm speaking of someone who already fell in love for people who shouldn't, probably, like teachers or bosses or whatever. Like in society, these are not allowed. And seeing her message on your Slack, like inviting you, how that felt for you? Because also, again, with the patriarchy thing, I'm sorry, I mean, talking in circles. It's not like what the normality of like receiving this kind of message and invitation. Of course, she was taking the lead, as I interpret from your story. How that sit with you, like, of course, having the message and like, oh my God, the girl, I'm like into it. She's writing to me, and it's clearly that she was inviting you out. So how was this process? Of course, you just told us already about the queer universe, so probably you weren't expecting anything different, but can you just...
I thought it was great. I mean, I think like one thing in her, not in her defense, but like to her credit, like she was super self-assured about what she wanted. Like she had obviously thought about this. Like she knew what she was looking for in a relationship. Like she wasn't just going and being like, I think that's part of why it felt so special. Like there was this feeling that like she couldn't just fall in love with anybody because she had such high standards. And like it's not like, that first date was amazing, but like there was other dates where I felt like I was in a job interview where she was like, what have you done that you're proud of, you know? And like, if you couldn't come up with an answer, she was like, I don't know. Can I be with someone that's not like proud of themselves? So there was a lot of like self-assurance in her that I was attracted to and that I thought was great. And also I think like actually to flip what you were saying on its head a little bit, there is, I think, an awareness of like, I hate asking people out because I don't want to be just like a dude that's asking somebody out. Like if I see a beautiful woman, I'm like, probably 18 million random guys that you don't know have asked you out today. I don't want to be like another dude that's just like, hey, anyways, I don't know anything about you, but like, I think you're pretty hot. Like, so I think her expressing interest, and obviously like it was obvious we'd been chatting for a while. But yeah, I was into that.
Absolutely.
I sort of have to give her credit. Like I feel like a foot massage is an amazing first date.
Yeah, I think she was trying to put me through the ringer. Like that was a real test. And also with the margaritas, she was like, can this guy survive?
Okay, I have this like other totally random question that I want to like jump to before it leaves my head. Her skin shined like a dolphin. Okay. Obsessed with that phrasing, but it, you know, I don't know. It's like, it was interesting, but you didn't say that before, did you? Did you say that before? That was new. Because I think I would have weirdly remembered that. It's very specific, great writing, specific. But, okay, this is just my question. Did you come up with it in the moment or did you think of it beforehand? I don't know.
I was just trying to describe her. I mean, also it's like, this is going to be public and like she could find it and hear it. So it's like, get a compliment in there, you know, like I don't want all these people thinking bad things about you. Your skin was great.
You like dolphins a lot.
No, but it was like, listen, this was like pre-skincare era. Nobody has shiny skin like that. Like now you would be like, oh yeah, nice skin. Back then it was like, what are you doing to your face? Like, what is happening? What's hyaluronic acid, you know? Like,
You're cracking me up.
so yeah, it was just like a distinct thing that I remember, I guess.
Okay, but I love how you described it. And let me ask you a writerly question. Like, how much do you think about details and description?
That's an interesting question. I mean, like, I don't think that that's how I experience the world. So, like, I don't really think about, like, description and detail and stuff. I think that the details that I'm interested are, like, narrative and are things that I'm like, I don't know if anybody is going to pick up on that, but it's important to me that it's in the story. Like, for example, like, when we go back to my apartment and we've cleaned out all of her furniture and the only thing that I have in the house is books, and it's like, well, why after living there for 2 years did I only have books there? It's like, was that my choice? Was that her choice? Like, I just think there's things like that I'm super interested in that feel very important, where it's like, again, I'm very careful not to make myself like the hero of the story, and I think it's more details like that I think are that are interesting to me and that I try to put into the stories.
And that's a great example of a detail because it's a detail that tells us a lot about your relationship without you having to tell us. How do you find that and pick that out, you're really conscious of it? It sounds like when you're like, oh, I know that this is going to tell the audience something about it, but it.
Yeah, I think I also think the experience of telling a story again is really different. I think a lot of the like at the Storytelling as well event, when you're there and your adrenaline's pumping and you have written 3 notes on a napkin and you're like, I guess I'm gonna go up and try and make this work. The things that pop out to you are the details that without you knowing are the most true. And I think when I listened back to the story, I was like, oh, that's a really interesting detail because also there's a lot of context behind it. So I think, honestly, I would love to say that I'm like thinking about all of it, but the reality is most of the time when I'm telling these stories, I am going up there and I know sort of like where I need the story to end and what I need in order to arrive at that ending. But there's a lot of stuff that comes out that I'm, like the middle, for example, like the turn of the story, which I think sounds so constructed. You know, the repetition of like, she said she supported me, and then I said I supported her, and like whatever. That was just a thing that just happened when I was on stage the first time. I hadn't like thought about how I was gonna do that reveal. And I think I was crying the first time I did it, so.
Oh yeah, I think you might.
So I think like I was just like literally like, it was just like I was just experiencing it and being like, oh, that is actually. So I think that is what's most interesting to me about telling a story live, and why I think it's better than, for me at least, than like editing one or writing one, because you know, you're just being honest, and like whatever comes out comes out.
Okay, so I could keep talking to you forever, but we need to open it up to everybody else in the audience.
Yes, so if anyone has a question, please just raise your hand here in the audience, and our gorgeous Raheel, beautiful soul, will come to you with the mic. So anyone in the audience?
So I'm in love with something very specific, which is how dignifying this story is. And I mean, we've all heard loads of broken love stories, and in most cases it's like, you know, she was a real bitch. Or, sorry, we could swear, couldn't we? Okay. But it's really telling of who you are as a person, I think. And I'm sorry, kind of, I can't leave behind my therapy side there. You've got to be a really good person to be able to do that. So first of all, thank you for that, and for showing us all that it is possible to tell a story that is dignifying of the love we lost, in a sense, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And at the same time, not trying to be the hero in the story, which you've said, and I really appreciate hearing it out loud, which means you've actually put your intention into it. But I'm also wondering how much of it, when we're reframing for the stage, because obviously there's a lot of, and obviously you as a writer have thought about how to structure it, how to go back to, you know, using the end, how to kind of walk us through it and through the detail, very, you know, great skill, really, really interesting details, and I was very intrigued by the dolphins as well. I love dolphins, by the way, but I do use face cream. But no, but it's really revealing, because it's about the love of somebody and how we each express that love. So it really brings us to a place. But I'm also wondering, when you're reframing for a stage, are you scared at any point of losing the original story in your head? Because this is the second time you told this story, I believe, and it's been 2 years, and you've probably worked it out again. Do you still remember what it felt like? And do you think if you're still to tell this story another 4 or 5 times, would you have lost the original, real Marco and Lisa story? Thank you.
That is a great question. Yeah, I mean, I think there's... Sorry, let me think before I answer that question. I do have a fear that obviously the more you tell the story, the less true it feels, I guess. I think the first time that I tell any of these stories, it's from a place of like needing an outlet for it, and really actually feeling those emotions. And so I think I was really concerned about whether or not I would actually feel those emotions. I think when I watched it back to see, you know, what worked and what didn't work, because that is a thing that I looked at, I noticed that there was a lot of things that were in there that I think were just things that I needed to get off my chest when I was telling it on the stage. So there used to be this part where I was talking about how being loved is somebody knowing you without you having to tell them things about yourself, and what that feels like. And that I knew we were going to break up when we had this fight where she said, like, who are you? Because I've been trying to work it out for 2 years and I have no idea who you are. But like the audience didn't really care about that last time. And I think it's because it gives 2 endings, which is a bit complicated. It's like, oh, okay, like, did it end there, or did it end the book, or like what's happening? So I just took that out because, you know, I just felt like the story could have been tighter. So yeah, I think that, you know, I'm afraid of losing things, and I don't think that I would tell this story like again in 2 years, because I do think that there's an authenticity to like needing to get these things out of you, and I think also like making it something that is shared with people other than, I think if you carry it yourself, it's just your story, and it can be a burden, and it can be this thing that happened in my life that's sad or that's funny or whatever it might be. But I think when you share it with people, it becomes, mythology for them, and it can mean whatever they need it to mean. I think like the first time that I told it, I was like weeping and came off stage like crying, and the first person that I talked to was like, yeah, I've had that exact same experience of like cleaning the apartment once you've broken up with somebody. And I was like, how is that the thing that you connected with? But like, cool. Like, I'm super happy that you connected with the story. But I think it's like, once you share it, you allow it to be something for other people other than, just a story between two people. And I think even the act of making it a story, you're carving out experience and a little bit of narrative and like sense making, and you're saying this is what happened and this isn't what happened. So I think there's a lot of fear in that. And the live audience I think telling in front of an audience of 200 people is really different. And because, anybody that's done it knows that a lot of the real-time processing is like, oh, what did the audience enjoy? Like, oh, they really like this sad part, like I should say another sad thing. Or like, they really like this joke, I should make the story funny. And I think that I fall victim to that a lot. And so telling it in this environment is really different because nobody found my jokes funny. And so that's just what I'm gonna have to think about in bed tonight.
It's okay. Anybody? We have more questions.
Johnny does.
Oh.
I do have a question. I've got two now because of what you just said. So first one, from what you just said, I mean, I've seen you multiple times at storytelling, and one of the things that I think you are brilliant at is your ability to entertain and to bounce off the audience. And in some ways, it makes you very funny and still very genuine. For me personally, what we saw tonight was my favourite I've ever seen you, because I don't think it's a case of your jokes didn't land here. I think it's the fact that you sat on a chair, unlike standing up, in the way you would build out your chest and kind of make it a bit of a show. You sat on a chair, and I saw such a different side to you, Marco, that was vulnerable, was thoughtful, was so unbelievably beautiful in the way you told that story. And it's the first time I've heard this story for me, so I was absolutely moved by it, and I preferred in some ways the ability that you had to be able to sit and almost like we're around a fire telling a story. And I think the way you told it tonight was beautiful. So for me, there's not about whether the jokes landed, it was about the fact you connected to the audience in a different way in an environment which is far more visceral. So thank you for that as a starting point.
And you stole my joke because I was going to say it's because I'm sitting on a chair.
Oh, sorry. But my other question really was about, you talked towards the end about the fact that you felt that at some point there was a disconnect. And I think the key to any long-term relationship is communication. And I suppose, what did the experience you went through with Lisa teach you about the importance of communication? Because to me, it sounds like, reading between the lines, there's obviously some breakdown or some disconnect in communication. What has it taught you since that relationship about communication?
That is a great question. I think that you should always give people the maximum amount of information and context that you can give them. This is actually really funny because this is like one of my major learnings in even the last 2 years since telling the story, unrelated to the story, is that I think that I used to make decisions for people. Like, I would go internal and think about all the details and then present a decision to a person. And I think even in this context, when we broke up, that is what happened, is that I went away and I've observed all these things, I'm analyzing all this information, we are breaking up. And she was slightly taken aback by that. Sorry if you're listening to this, Lisa, slightly is being generous. But, I have a friend who found out something that I didn't share with her, and she was really upset that I hadn't shared that with her. And she said that I always make the decision for people, and that I never give them the opportunity to forgive me. And so I think in the time since this story has happened, I think that's the most important thing, is like giving people all the information and letting them decide how they feel about it, for multiple reasons. One of which being like, you have an idea in your head of, you know, what is good and what is bad and what makes you unlovable and all of those sort of things. But people will surprise you all the time, and if you give them the information and the opportunity, they might accept you in a way that you hadn't expected. So I think on both of our parts, we could have done a much better job of just communicating everything openly, and instead of like being really afraid of the fear of how you will hurt somebody by telling them something, I would rather default to telling them something, letting them be hurt, and then helping them through that hurt if that's what happens, because they might not be hurt by it. So.
Like a reflection, maybe it's a great love story, and it doesn't matter in a way, you know, it doesn't matter that it ended in a breakup. Like, it's still a love story, and it still changed your life in a positive way. And that's almost, and it's complex, right? Because humans are complex, love is complex, and it's so different than a rom-com, like than the love in a rom-com.
Well, if you wanted it to be a rom-com, she would have to walk in right now.
Oh my god.
And be like, you know, it was always you. And then I would be like, no. No. Yeah, no, you're right. But I think the beauty of the rom-com structure is that you know what's going to happen. And the beauty of romance in real life is that you don't know what's going to happen. And so I would never want my real life to be a rom-com, because knowing what's going to happen would be boring.
Okay, thank you so much, Marco, for coming on stage and being so open with us.
Yeah, we just have two final questions before we let you go. And first, this is always like, nerve-wracking. What is one thing about you that no one ever expects?
I think people are always surprised that I'm an introvert. I think like people don't equate being introverted with like coming up and bearing your soul in front of 200 people. Yeah. So I think people are usually surprised by that.
Definitely. Definitely, absolutely. No, but I get it.
Yeah, like
okay.
I would not talk to a stranger in the street, but
yeah, like 200 people, no problem.
All good.
Okay, so then the final question is, what's your biggest takeaway from sharing your story?
Yeah, I think that the biggest takeaway from sharing this story, or sharing any story, you know, if you keep a story to yourself, it's just yours, and it can only help you or it can only hurt you, and often it only hurts you. And I think sharing stories with other people allows it to be a tool for them, and it also allows it to be something that's not so big in your psyche. It really sort of allows you to like put the thing in a capsule and go like, oh, this is a story. And it also helps you contextualize that, you know, everything else that's happening in your life is also a story. So if something feels really serious and feels really big and feels really bad, you know, it's just a part of being alive. And, you know, that's a part of like the narrative of who you are, and it will contribute to who you become. So yeah, I think that's how I feel about it. And I feel like everyone should do it.
Well said.
That's it for this episode of What Lingers. Thanks so much to Gonzalo and his team at LX Brewery for hosting us.
Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And also follow us on Instagram at Storytelling Lisboa to keep up to date.
What Lingers is a podcast from the team behind Storytelling Lisboa.
It's produced by Johnny Bunyan. Thank you so much for listening, and join us again for another edition of What Lingers.
See you next week.